After playing about 2 hours of the Battlefront open beta, I was sated. As a nostalgic throwback to Star Wars games from 10 years ago, it had strayed too far towards the mainstream, using an FPS combat model that was just about the most simple and shallow version of iron sightsless, grenadesless, recoilless target shooting since the original Doom. As far as multiplayer-only throwbacks go towards how things used to be a decade ago, Rainbow Six Siege may be a place of much greener pastures, and one that I can't imagine was aimed at a mainstream audience. Siege is a Counter-Strike clone. 2 teams of 5 slow, chunky SWAT guys try to kill each other or take over an objective point. And just like Counter-Strike, it's difficult and demanding. Movement is slow, but combat is fast. Its model of first-person combat is one that forces you to maximize cover and minimize reaction times for a lightning-fast time to kill that has deaths usually coming from where you can't see them. And as a fan of the older games, turning Rainbow Six into a Counter-Strike clone makes a whole lot more sense to me than turning it into a Gears of War clone. This is the closest the series has come to its Red Storm roots since taking that trip to Vegas in 2006. And to be honest, going back to an understated presentation actually shocked me the first time when I loaded up one of the introductory single-player situation missions for the first time. There was no lengthy cinematic story introducing it all, no flashy tutorial button prompts, no friendly AIs whose asses you have to follow behind, no disembodied voice on the radio giving you instructions every step of the way. There isn't even any background music. The single-player content in this game quietly and respectfully drops you into a shooting gallery where you fail and retry over and over again to learn the same maps you have to know for the multiplayer. And although this somehow became an unpopular opinion to have right now, the truth is that if I had to pick and choose just one, I'd much rather have this kind of mode for single-player content than an insultingly dumb story scripting me through a cinematic campaign of corridors. And amidst all the controversies of canceling Patriots and nixing a traditional campaign and including a microtransaction shop for cosmetics, I feel like a lot of people might actually miss what a classic throwback to the good old days Siege really is. This is a mass-marketed AAA FPS game released in 2015 that has commercials on television, but there's no regenerating health, no third-person cover system, and no kill-streak rewards. You're gonna have to make room on your keyboard for 2 lean buttons that are critical for clearing rooms. Strafing and backpedaling are slow, ladders are sticky, and reloading takes forever. In terms of the game's sense of control and movement, there are some choices here that feel like genuine throwbacks to Rainbow Six 3, and I love that. In fact, after playing about 25 hours, I have been having a blast with this game. It is without a doubt the most fun I've had playing a multiplayer shooter this year, and may continue to provide many more of those years if it's treated right. That has me really worried. But for now, I was able to enjoy what are probably the most delightfully dynamic, intense, tactical FPS matches outside of Counter-Strike. The cornerstone of that dynamism is this cutting-edge physics system that can let you punch holes in walls that you can see through, shoot through, and defend or offend through. The physical properties that each hole follows are so detailed that you can even connect the dots of smaller holes to punch out larger holes and draw pictures in the walls if you want to. In practice, this means that players are using the very walls of a level on only a temporary basis. Players can enter into an objective area from above, below, around, about, over, and under, and tackle all the problems the opposing side is offering in a variety of ways, depending on the tools available and the situation on hand. And that's done by picking an operator. Siege's version of the character class is a guy with a special gadget with stats of speed and armor to match, with a little tiny bit of flexibility available for your loadout. And a lot of the game's strategy comes from pitting their abilities against one another. To illustrate, let's start with Castle. You spend your XP points to unlock Castle, watch a little Meet the Castle video, then learn to use his gadget in a match, which is a tough reinforced metal door barricade that enemies can't slap apart like they can with the normal wooden ones. On the other hand, anyone can bring a breaching charge that can blow up these doors, but not if Castle's barricades are combined with Mute's electronics jammers, which disables breaching charges. On the other hand, Sledge's hammer can break any kind of door, or walls for that matter, but not reinforced walls, which the defenders can pick and choose to make certain points unbreakable and permanent. But not 100% permanent. They can be breached only by Thermite's charges, but he only comes with 2 of them, both of which can still be countered by Mute's jammer, which can in turn be countered by Thatcher's EMP grenades. Resources and time are distributed in a way where defenders can't afford to defend absolutely everything, and the attackers are seriously screwed if a critical operator dies dies early in a match. The end result is an FPS game where the contest is less about shooting and more about teamwork and tactics. It's about playing off of each other's advantages while mentally mapping out a creative and unexpected route to whatever point the defenders left the most unguarded. Anyone sticking to a point too hard will inevitably open themselves up to some other spot they're missing behind them or some kind of gadgetry that can throw them off. It's as if the whole game has been designed around how to solve the problem of players camping corners, and the practice of weeding out stubborn defenders is almost more like solving a puzzle than it is a reflex test of target shooting. In fact, its emphasis on environmental destruction, its convincing echoey and stereo-heavy sound design, and even its comically oversized gun models with next to useless hipfire reminds me of another big multiplayer FPS. It's Battlefield. Or, in a brilliant summary that one of my earlier squad mates gave me, is a sharp combination of the tactical insta-death of Counter-Strike with the bombastic explosive versatility that you get in the modern battlefields. A lot of good memories of Bad Company 2 were coming flooding back to me while I was playing this thing. But despite all that, it does at least carry with it one unique FPS rule that set the original Rainbow Sixes apart and got carried into Counter-Strike to turn that whole rule into an esport. And that is that it's not muscle memory, twitch reflexes, map control, or improvisation that win a gunfight here, even though they are all contributing factors. Instead, crosshair placement is key. It's telling that the one skill I had to learn that turned a night of losing streaks into days of winning was patience. Patience and restraint. With the time to kill this quick, spraying towards any black blobby pixels that might be an enemy is a legitimate tactic. You want to be covered by so much cover over such a large distance that only a slight bit of your head will be exposed for them to return fire to, which unfortunately means that if they hit anything at all, they're gonna hit your head for a one-shot kill. And with hipfire being nerfed so much, that means that even your spray and prays have to be aimed with precision. Every kill you ever plan to get should be some kind of ambush, so turning a multiplayer Rainbow Six into this much of a stealth game is probably another reason I found this one so far up my alley.
Op 4 eliminated.
And that's not even factoring in the drones. The attackers get free time to scout ahead with little RC cars that can do sick 360 kickflips on their way to tag enemies and objectives. This little tiny chunk of the game feels like it could be fleshed out into an entire game of first-person hide-and-seek on its own. It's a moment of physical slapstick comedy when you're zigzagging your drone to slip out of an enemy's aim, or stealthy mischievous fun when you're camouflaging into clutter to plant a hidden camera in plain sight. There's just so much going on in every match, so many different moves, strategies, tactics, and layers to the gameplay that all counter each other that there's no way any two matches play the same. And it's all tightly limited by that 5 versus 5 player cap that keeps it from becoming too much of a mess of exploding level pieces. Almost every death is followed by some thoughtful reminiscing on what could have gone differently. Maybe you should have come in from a different angle, or blown a hole in their cover from the opposite angle, or drove a drone up to their ankles and charged in while they're distracted by that drone, or have a teammate distract them from the opposite side while you flank them, or shoot open a peephole and toss grenades inside of the hole from a distance, or go prone to punch some hidden holes in at ankle length to use them as turrets. There's a lot of depth here, countless different ways any individual encounter can play out. But unfortunately, one of the most frequent outcomes is frustration over the netcode. It's sad, but that netcode may be a crippling flaw for this game. It's seriously not great. It's hitting launch Battlefield 4 levels of sync issues. You can't guarantee that you'll be behind cover when you think you are, or that your headshots will land where you point them. Any straight head-to-head firefight is a 50-50 crapshoot because of just how unpredictable your hit registration is gonna be. In fact, one of the reasons why learning to play patiently was such a big boon to my score was because of how it compensates for the bad netcode and high pings. Because in terms of actually tracking your movement and damage in a big firefight, the game suddenly becomes much more unreliable. And that's a crippling issue, because it's going to hamstring the game's growth unless that's fixed fast. Right now, the skill ceiling for this game is valleys below the mountain it could be, because between the bad netcode, high pings, and incredibly gimpy hipfire, there's just not a lot of room for finesse and self-expression when it comes time to actually plant individual bullets on dudes. So despite how much more depth this game has in its map design and routing over Counter-Strike, it's going to stay miles upon miles behind unless they really overhaul the gunplay and the netcode attached to it. Add to that the fact that this is yet another big mass-marketed game launching with a long, long list of known shippable bugs. A lot of these carried over from the beta, and some of them are so obnoxious and obvious that it still boggles my mind how stuff like this keeps managing to ship through. Like, why does voice chat just start randomly broadcasting your mic to the whole team without you telling it to? Why is there a character limit on text chat messages that's smaller than a freaking tweet? Why can't I scroll up to see the previous chat messages? Once they're gone forever. You'd think that a game so dependent on teamwork and communication would have its communication features actually finished. Why can't you see the objective type when choosing your class, since you're never ever going to want to pick cluster frag grenades when rescuing a hostage? Why does the game give me a 50-50 chance of crashing out of matchmaking if I go to the shop in between rounds? A lot of times the matchmaking will just crap out and keep me waiting forever. As much as I love this game, I can't say that it wasn't a struggle to love this game. And the developers know that. They've documented pretty much all of these problems I've mentioned in the review. They do AMAs about all the problems people are having with it, and they're working on a mid-December patch that will hopefully make this review obsolete by the time you watch it. But a lot of those problems are holdovers from 2 public betas, and their slow progress in fixing them does not instill confidence. Ubisoft does not have a solid reputation for cultivating multiplayer communities over long periods, and that's a shame, because this game deserves it. The developers are looking at this game's potential as an esport, but they're not pushing that angle right now. But I really think that could only possibly happen if it was given a much more respectful treatment by the folks behind it. Right now, my impression is that Rainbow Six Siege is an excellent game working within a rotten system. Even though there are all these issues with the UI and the netcode, the developers have made a great core game underneath all that, and they're diligent about keeping up with and responding to the community's complaints. I'd like to believe that they're good at their jobs and know what they're doing, but something is hindering that process. Whether it's the tech the game's built on or the corporate culture of Ubisoft itself, something is preventing them from implementing a whole lot of minor changes that need to be done. If not, then all those little issues are piling up high enough to seriously stunt the growth of this game. As long as it takes this much trouble to truly enjoy the game, and if the netcode continues to create a lot of bullshit deaths in the middle of a gunfight, it's not going to break into a bigger audience and the bigger appreciation that it really deserves. There are just too many roadblocks in place, starting with the game's slow and patient pacing, which is a far cry from the freer shooting of Battlefield and COD, to even Uplay itself, which is just another cumbersome system in its way, to the $60 price tag that's scaring a whole lot of people away. Although its 10 maps, with nighttime and daytime variations for each, feel like a substantial number on their own, there's not a whole lot of different modes to play those maps in. There's no dedicated server browser available to get crazy with the player limit or map selections. Terrorist Hunt is not quite a genuine bot match, but more of a PvE fight against waiting AIs who spawn in greater numbers than the players. The situations are gussied up single-player Terrorist Hunt, and casual and ranked modes are pretty much the same thing, except in ranked mode you can pick your spawn and play for best out of 4 rounds rather than 3. But to get to the level 20 ranking required for that, you're gonna have to grind away at the casual mode for a good 3 or 4 days. And by that point, you've exhausted about as much of the surprisingly small unlock tree that there is here. In fact, the small and stubby size of the unlock tree has the oddly positive effect of making the microtransaction boosters seem like kind of a non-issue. But on my way there, I was having a blast with this game, and what a game it is. In the interest of transparency, I played most of these 20 or 30 hours with a group of personal friends, but did spend about 5 hours joining into matches solo, and still found the community to be fairly tolerable. The tiny player count, long wait time after death, and the sheer volume of teamwork-oriented mechanical cues tend to prevent people from going in guns blazing to muck it up for the rest of you. And I generally found more helpful voices using their microphones than I did bleeding idiots. So that's good. Of course, you'll fare better assembling a team of your own from your gaming community of choice, but that's not likely to happen until this game faces some serious price drops. Once it does, go for it. Go all in. Hell, if you're rich enough to throw around $60 on a whim and like breaching and flashing and clearing, this game will probably do you just fine. After 10 years of seeing the whole squad-based FPS shtick devolve into cover shooting and battlefielding, it feels like a breath of fresh air to see a huge publisher like Ubisoft decide to go small scale again. They're competing with Insurgency and Counter-Strike with this game, and that's a pattern that I totally wouldn't mind seeing more of.
He's gonna come through that way, so don't worry. He's gonna be going for you at this point. Damn.
Oh my!
Draw! What? I think we win. We win.
Nice.
We win from this. Somehow. We win.
You're welcome. Sorry.
Because it's a draw. Like, we just win right now. That is amazing. Yes.